Check. All right, welcome in everybody to PFK The Show Legends League, brought to you by Playing for Keeps. My name is Bobby Ray. I'm your commissioner. A few days ago on June 9th, we started a draft from 2,500 of the best players in Major League Baseball history, and not Major League Baseball, all of baseball. Have some Negro Leagues players, have some Japanese players, some guys that never made it to the bigs. We have 18 participants in this league. We did 26 rounds to fill out full rosters. All the rest of the remaining players will go to the other 12 franchises as the divisional cupcake opponents. And we're going to play through a full 162 game schedule and vie for World Series glory. As the season of Major League Baseball looks less and less promising, we're looking forward to watching these squads of generational all-stars and Hall of Fame greats duke it out every day on Twitch from here until November. This is going to be a series of divisional previews to look through everybody's rosters, lineups, and rotations. Each division contains 3 of our 18 participants, and today we're starting with the AL West. The AL West is full of, in my opinion, incredible infields. There's just so much star power on the infield in these lineups, and that's not even including the fact that Ted Williams and Ken Griffey Jr. are in the outfield. When you come to play the AL West, you're facing Ted Williams, Ken Griffey Jr., Edgar Martinez, Mike Piazza, Honus Wagner, Stan Musial, and it's just doesn't stop with the offense. So we're going to jump right into it with the team who actually picked last in our draft. That would be the Oakland Athletics. Picking from the 18th slot is awful late, but to get that immediate turn and get 2 of these huge players off the board, our Oakland GM went and got Honus Wagner and Stan Musial to build a team around. Going around the horn here, we got Jeff Bagwell at first base. Paul Molitor actually being signs shown in the early season that Paul Molitor is going to be playing as the starting second baseman for this club despite his primary position over at third. We'll see if that pays dividends or not. Honus Wagner at shortstop. Got Matt Chapman at third, filling out the modern A's pride. Roy Campanella, a high draft pick behind the plate. Cool Papa Bell manning center field. A platoon of Reggie Jackson and Al Simmons in right, and of course, superstar Stan Musial at first base. We'll look at the rotation later, but that's Phil Niekro, Bill Foster, Brett Saberhagen, Vida Blue, and Chief Bender. So the style for this team is really all about putting your best 2 players first. Right off the gate, Honus Wagner and Stan Musial hitting first and second. These guys are going to see so many plate appearances, it's going to be nuts. So many teams have their best hitters hitting second, third, even fourth. But with the A's, it's kind of that Joe Madden school of get your best players out on the roster as soon as you can and get them up as many times as you can. And I think that's probably going to work out pretty well for the A's here. The depth of this team is really quite solid. Billy Hamilton bringing some speed. This is the classic Hall of Fame Billy Hamilton for the record. Dick Allen at first base. Al Simmons part of that platoon with Reggie Jackson. Got Mickey Cochran, who's maybe the one spot where the team could upgrade is at backup catcher. And then Tony Phillips for some utility roles. Looking at a bit of some platoon splits when you get over to the facing a left-handed pitcher. There you see Al Simmons slotting into third, bringing that good contact. Still Bagwell hitting in a cleanup spot. And Paul Molitor holding it down at the keystone. Going over to the pitching rotation. The Athletics surprised us by not taking a pitcher until the 5th or 6th round of the draft, going through their first 5 picks without taking a single arm, which I thought at the time was a pretty big gamble. Looks like it was his strategy, though, to kind of take some high upside, high risk arms here, and it doesn't get any more than the biggest knuckleballer of all time with Phil Niekro. This meant that the Athletics actually ended the first full day of our draft without a pitcher on the roster, which can't have been too comfortable of a place to be. The bullpen has only one real long reliever with Dave Stewart, whereas a lot of our teams have a ton of starters in the pen, opting instead to actually go for a lot of closing pitchers so that the bullpen is just nails from front to back. With Troy Percival looking to slam the door, but maybe the best reliever, John Franco, being the setup guy. So when I went looking through the AL West, a couple things jumped out to me about the A's. In a division of, hold on one second, I'm going to check the chat. Oh, I don't see anybody in chat. That's all good. Hey, everybody, say hi. So I think the A's stand out as having the best infield in a division of incredible infields. I mean, you're looking at, let's go back here, Honus Wagner, Jeff Bagwell, Paul Molitor, and Matt Chapman with Roy Campanella behind the plate. All five of those guys are great bats. Got good enough defense to make it through, with Matt Chapman and Honus Wagner being the real strength of the infield. And then I think that this team has the best depth in the division, addressing just about everything that they need to. Backup catcher, again, the one spot to improve, but if that's the one spot that you got to improve, you don't have much to worry about. I think that the A's picks of the draft was getting Jeff Bagwell in the 3rd round was a gnarly good selection. I think he could have gone the first 2 rounds real easy. And then all the way in the 19th round to snag Carlos Delgado was a bit of a coup. He's really a guy who I could see pulling out a huge season for the Athletics here. And another interesting thing about the A's is, rather than going for a lot of velocity or strikeout stuff, except for outside of Vita Blue here, the Athletics just have a ton of break, just nasty stuff and curve on their pitches. 99 break from Necro, 86 from Foster, 90 from Saberhagen, 94 from Blue, and 90 from Bender. However, there's not a lot in the way of high strikeout per 9 stats. You've got 82, 80, 70, 79, and 68. So we've got all these bendy pitches going all over the place, but it's not for a high strikeout rate, which leads me to think that this is going to be a big ground ball team. And I think that this defense is really going to have to step up if the A's are going to be able to make it into the postseason. I wrote down 3 keys for every team, and that's exactly my first one for the A's, making sure that the defense, which is strong on the left side but somewhat suspect everywhere else, doesn't hurt these low strikeout pitchers. The second key is that Reggie Jackson and Al Simmons form a platoon that actually produces out of the 3-4 hole and doesn't put too much pressure on Roy Campanella to be a major run producer for this team. And then I think that one of Carlos Delgado, Dick Allen, or Paul Molitor needs to have an actual all-star season. I give all 3 of those things happen, the Athletics are booking a ticket to the ALCS. If any of those things don't come through, then there might be some trades or free agent acquisitions, which we know the Athletics owner is wont to do. All right, moving on from the A's. If you have any questions about the A's, type them up in chat, and I'll check every once in a while. Going from the last pick of the draft to the first pick of the draft, the Seattle Mariners picked at the beginning of our 18-pick snake and then had the longest wait in the draft before their second pick. And he shocked the world by taking not Babe Ruth, not Willie Mays, but Ken Griffey Jr., possibly the sweetest baseball cards in the history of baseball. Is that even an argument? Griffey, by the stats in game, isn't exactly top tier like Willie Mays or like Ted Williams. But he's good enough across the board that he definitely warrants a first-round selection. And if he's your favorite player, then that's your favorite player, and you got to go get him, right? So looking around the diamond, we've got Todd Helton at first, Ryan Sandberg at second, Francisco Lindor at short, Anthony Rendon at third, with Bill Dickey behind the plate, and Edgar Martinez at DH. And an outfield of Ken Griffey Jr., Ronald Acuna Jr., and Dave Winfield. But I think that the strength of the Mariners is actually in the pitching rotation, where he's got Pedro Martinez, Christy Mathewson, Dwight Gooden, Ron Guidry, who he got pretty late. I thought I wrote that down. He got that pretty late in the draft. And Bucky Walters is a pretty reasonable 5th starter, with Don Drysdale and Chuck Finley as extra starters if any of those guys don't perform. But the Pedro, Christy, Doc Gooden top 3 is about as built for the playoffs as any rotation that I've analyzed, which is all of them. There might be a little bit of weakness here in the bullpen. Lee Smith and Aroldis Chapman obviously stand out and should be really gnarly, but there might be a tough job getting it from these ace starters to the back end of the pen. Let's see here. I thought the picks of the draft for the Mariners were Manny Sanguillen, the backup catcher, all the way in the 23rd round. That's great value, great defensive catcher, good enough contact skills to not kill you. The discipline, you don't really need your backup catcher to draw a bunch of walks. I thought this was a great pick really late in the draft. Christy Mathewson, I thought, was huge value in the 3rd round. I thought he could have been a guy who was maybe one of the first couple pitchers off the board. As you see, his actual stats in game are just insane, except for velocity. The one risk that I wonder how this game is actually going to work out is that screwball as a primary pitch. He's got a screwball and a 12-6 curve, and then two different moving fastballs that are both in the 90s. So you would think that that is actually a recipe for success. He's got a high enough home runs per 9 stat. Maybe the screwball doesn't hurt him too much, but he could also be a big home run problem. If he's not, I think he's a Cy Young candidate, easy. So the keys for this team, I think number one is Doc Gooden good enough? Dwight Gooden with only a 94 overall maybe isn't high enough for how good he was in real life. And the underlying stats show that he might actually play more like a 99. 99 velocity, 98 break, 91 Ks per 9, good stamina rating, good enough hits per 9. The only weakness is maybe a few walks. But this is a guy who could really overperform, and if he does, give the Mariners 3 true aces, which would make them the best rotation in our league. The second key for me is that Edgar is the linchpin of this lineup. He's hitting third in both lineups against lefties and righties, as set by the Mariners GM, and his stats are incredible. His clutch stat is 97, so if you get runners on base, he's going to drive them home. And if he performs, then this lineup is really going to work. Everything else just falls into place. And then the last key is that this team's biggest weakness is probably actually defense. There's strong defense from Griffey Jr. They're strong up the middle with Francisco Lindor and Ryan Sandberg. But otherwise in the corners, it's a little bit shaky. So if this rotation can pitch to a high enough strikeout rate, then that can cover for this troublesome D because they really are a strikeout-heavy team. And that is the Mariners. Now going to the middle of the draft, actually the team who picked 10th, almost smack dab in the middle, is their league mate, the Angels. When are we getting face cam? Jumanji was cool. Yeah, Jumanji was cool. Yeah, I guess I should get one. I've been trying to figure out how to do Twitch stuff, but everything I've learned is off the computer, and it's so far really hard to stream from PlayStation and figure out how to do anything else with that. I'll figure it out. Oh yeah, if you haven't set your lineups, I'm either just letting the computer do it, or I'm going in and doing whatever I think is best. So I don't care. That's fun for me. I think all three of these teams did set lineups. Maybe not the Angels, but I think the Mariners and A's both set their lineups. They did. All right, diving into the Angels. Picking in the middle of the draft, I think ended up being an advantage, though I think it's going to take a while to see if that plays out. But I thought the Angels made the pick of the early draft, taking Ted Williams at 10 overall. Just look at these stats. He's going to be in the competition for the MVP because he's going to be a top 5 hitter. There's just almost no doubt about it. Especially that 99 vision and 99 discipline. He's going to be on base well over a 400 clip. The power's insane. Williams is going to crush. It's too good. Let's see here. And then the Angels, I also thought, took an incredible pick in the second round with Mike Piazza. Catcher is definitely the deepest or the shallowest position in our league, and getting somebody who's not just a passable hitter, but somebody who's going to be a good cleanup hitter with that second pick, I thought was a really, really good move. The lineup is really an old school two-bopper lineup, which I think is pretty fun. So you got Mookie Betts, Pete Hill, and Ted Williams in the outfield. You got Eddie Murray at first, Chase Utley at second, Jose Reyes at third, Wade Boggs at catcher, and Mike Piazza at DH, with Dale Murphy doing some DH and center field jobs. I think I said Piazza was DH. He's definitely catcher. But you can really see that there's all this power right here at 3 and 4, and just about everybody else in this lineup is a contact hitter. There's, of course, some, platoon split power bursts here, but this lineup is going to be turning over a lot, getting on base, and then when Ted Williams and Mike Piazza come up, you just better hope that the bases aren't loaded. The depth here is pretty solid. Benito Santiago, I think, is an excellent backup catcher, especially to be able to platoon against lefties, if you ever need to give Piazza a day off, I guess. Fred Lynn was another incredible pick with the Angels' very last pick of the draft. Konerko also went super late. I think he went in the 24th round. And the Angels' other best pick of the draft, I thought, was Dale Murphy in the 16th round, which fell way too far. And then looking at the pitching rotation, got a rotation of Cy Young, Max Scherzer, Shohei Ohtani, Carl Hubble, and J.R. Richard, and the thinnest bullpen in our league with only 6 pitchers. Now, this could be just an oversight, or it might be on purpose. One of the things about not filling your bullpen with a bunch of starters is having the AI manager be less confused about which pitchers actually pitch in which situations. So I think the Angels may have set themselves up to always have an actual reliever somewhere around a 90 overall pitching all the time with a pretty darn good closer. I don't know if that's going to be a benefit or not. I think we'll see after a month or so of the season. This is a really top-heavy rotation in my eyes. Cy Young and Max Scherzer are awesome. Shohei is a little bit middling as far as a pitcher goes. He really brings more of his value in the fact that he can also step up to the plate for you and DH some days. But this lineup is so deep, I don't know that Shohei is going to end up being that valuable in that role. Carl Hubble is another piece that the Angels got in the 9th round, one of the last 99s on the board, and could end up being a breakout player. That 99 break could be gnarly. And J.R. Richard was another player taken way late, but it was solid value that late in the draft. So the big keys for me for the Angels, number one, is that a true ace emerges from this rotation. I think Cy Young or Scherzer or Hubble could each take a step and be one of those guys who's absolute Cy Young contention all year. If none of them does, I don't know that this rotation is going to be enough to carry him to the playoffs. If 2 of them do, I think watch out, and it's similar to the Mariners situation where they have an outside chance of being the best rotation in the league. The second key for the Angels is that one of these guys, and who really knows who it's going to be, one of these guys needs to be in the contention for the MVP. I think there's a darn good chance it's Ted Williams. It could be Mike Piazza. It could even be Mookie Betts or Eddie Murray or Wade Boggs. I don't think that all of these guys are going to have absolute MVP tier seasons, but I bet one of them will. And if they do, then this lineup is going to work. Because the rest of this lineup, which is key number 3, is just to turn over the lineup. Huge contact skills, huge vision, amazing discipline. This lineup is going to be a nightmare to get out. And when a lot of them are on the bases, there's enough speed on here to keep things rolling. I think this is maybe, I don't think it's my favorite lineup in the league, but it's definitely top 3 or 4. And that's saying a lot because there are some amazing lineups in this Legends League. So that's it for the Angels. They got to have an ace actually emerge from their staff, and they got to rely on this incredible lineup. So that's the AL West. We've also got our cupcake teams, which is the Rangers, which is where we're going to put all of the highly rated players who are actually war heroes that fought in either World War I or World War II. I think that'll be kind of cool. Them mixed in with people like Joey Gallo, who are closely associated with the Rangers. But I was looking it up, like Enos Slaughter fought in the war. A couple of these other guys did that I had never heard before. But that's going to be a fun roster. And then fittingly, we made the Astros into the cheaters. So everybody else who's highly rated who didn't make a team, who cheated at some point in their career, whether they were using the spitball or they were corking their bats or they were on PEDs like my boy Brett Boone here at second base, they're going to the Astros and they can all cheat together, and hopefully you all can beat up on them all season. So after doing a whole bunch of analysis and looking at all this stuff, I think that my prediction is that the Athletics are going to take the AL West. I think it's going to be a tough battle, and I think that if the Mariners or the Angels, like I was saying, can have their rotations click, I think that whole narrative turns in a second. I think if the Athletics pitching rotation is inducing a ton of ground balls and they're not going to Chapman and Honus Wagner, then all of a sudden that narrative changes. But based on what I've seen on paper, the A's are my favorite out of the West. And yeah, Brett Boone was on one of the cupcake teams, which I realized I just get to run all the cupcake teams. So my hope is to beat you guys with all the players that you didn't take. And I'm not making any super teams. I'm trying to make all of these other cupcake teams about equal, but make them competitive, you know? We don't want them to suck. Alrighty, so I'm going to close this stream down and come right back up in like 30 seconds so I can rename the next one NL West Preview just so it'll sort nicely on Twitter or on Twitch. And yeah, be right back with the NL West.